Hello everyone, welcome back to another Doctor Who Big Finish review. In today's Doctor Who Big Finish review, I am taking a look at Planet Krynoid, Nightfall, which I've just finished listening to, and I need to talk about it because this might be the most darkest and bleakest story I have listened to in the Doctor Who Big Finish catalogue. This is quite something. When this was originally announced, it was marketed as Doctor Who meet The Last of Us and The Walking Dead, and it definitely has those vibes. And what better way to get you in the mood for The Last of Us Season 2 than a Doctor Who equivalent of it. Planet Krynoid has the same sort of energy as an early Big Finish, and I mean that in the nicest way possible, that there is a grit to it and this sort of experimental nature, and I think that this box set encapsulates a very early Big Finish feel to it, because early Big Finish spin-offs would take a monster or a villain and craft a whole series around it, like Cyberman, Dalek Empire, Davros. This very much feels like in the same vein of that, and I think that it fits that perfectly. Now, it is told over sort of 3 hours, so we have 3 stories. We have Sunlight by Jonathan Morris, and we have Sunset by Jonathan S. Powell, and we have Darkness by Chris Chapman. Now, despite it being 3 writers, it doesn't feel like there is sort of a jarring nature where you have to adjust to that new writer. It very much feels like it is, 3 writers, 1 vision. How can we make the most depressing and bleak Doctor Who story possible? And they succeed with that, because this box set does have a warning at the start of each story that this is not suitable for younger listeners, and by the end of the box set it definitely has earned that. It's not doing it to be edgy, it does go to some quite troubling places, and I admire that of this. So let's break down this release and talk about the stories themselves within this set. The story for Planet Krynoid. So we kickstart this rather bleak and depressing series of events in Sunlight, and I think that Jonathan Morris does a brilliant job at establishing everything. I think this is what a first episode should be. It establishes the main premise of the series and sort of how these events are going to spiral. It sets up the sort of social class of this colony world, Sunlight, and I think it does it wonderfully. Wonderfully is the right word to use for this, as we have 2 astronaut technicians repairing the colony world satellite, where they discover a pod lodged in the satellite, and quite frankly they should have left it there, because where the events go it probably would have been safer, because there is this sort of, as soon as they realise what the pod is, because we have the colony leader Hodan, played by Rhys Shearsmith, which is his first Big Finish, which feels kind of crazy to think that this is a Rhys Shearsmith's first Big Finish, because, I feel like he should have done loads. And there is sort of a rule by the sort of governor of the colony to dispose of these pods, but there is sort of a secret history that there was a colony before Sunlight what just got wiped out. I think we know why it got wiped out. And one of these astronauts, Azeroth, gets infected by the Krynoid pod, and he is basically dead. He's out in space, but they recover him because there's a glimmer of life there, but obviously it's not really life. He's just a walking plant at that point, just waiting to mutate. So they bring the second pod back to be examined, and this is where sort of Azeroth makes a full recovery, as he should be dead. And this is where we learn that the colony leader, like I say, Rhys Shearsmith's character, he has a terminally ill wife. And they think that the Krynoid pod could be the cure, that if it can bring Azeroth back to life, maybe it can treat this terminally ill disease, because everything seems normal for Azeroth, but obviously he's starting to mutate and is starting to go rogue and becomes a fugitive, as there is an order to kill him on sight. But it's too late, as they have gone ahead and sort of trialled the Krynoid pod with the colony leader. As they've tried the pod with the colony leader's wife, and is now become a Krynoid in itself. So she's starting to mutate, and we go to the lower levels of the old colony where the Doctor is. Sunset by Jonathan S. Powell. So this is your Doctor episode. This is the one you're probably all interested about. Paul McGann in Planet Krynoid, how does that affect the sort of status quo of this series? Does the episode become a little bit lighter in tone? No. It is very much the Doctor in the world of Planet Krynoid, and the Doctor is this sort of beacon of hope in the darkness, isn't he? He's the sort of light that shines where you think, yeah, he's going to get rid of the darkness. There is very little light to be seen within this, and you think that the Doctor has got to save this colony. No. He makes things worse, and I think that's such an interesting angle to throw at it with this story. That the Doctor, he's not perfect, he's not going to save everything. You think that there's a solution there with the satellite, instead that it causes more chaos there, and I think that this episode in particular, it very much has the Dalek effect, where you see what one Dalek can do. It can do a lot of things. This is very much two Krynoids nearly wiping out this colony world. And the Doctor is very much, this is very much a fight for survival episode. This is very much sort of a game of cat and mouse, where ultimately you're not going to win this one, which is very interesting, because we have the Doctor very much trying to get down to the bottom of what happened to the previous colony, whilst trying to, you know, find the TARDIS so we can go back and save Liv, as this, you know, it sort of hints at where we can go next with this, whether this, you know, story begins in an 8th Doctor box set and this ties into Planet Krynoid, or whether that's series 2, who knows. So that is very much that, and when we get to the ending, it just becomes even more, oh my god, things are just about, you know, out of the fire into the frying pan, because things are really heating up. The final story is Darkness by Chris Chapman, which I think is a very fitting title, because this is probably the darkest episode of the series, and it has some very gruesome moments, and I think that this episode in particular has the Last of Us vibes, and I think Chernobyl, in a way, that you sort of see the domestic fallout of the events hitting at the start of this story, and you have a real, quite, I say gruesome a lot, but this is quite a real traumatic moment with a Krynoid pod, with such an unexpected way, but it makes total sense. And the way that scene is written and performed, it is really quite startling. And I did find myself pausing it and going, oh my god, wow, we're doing this. And I mean that in the nicest way possible, but I was just sort of taken aback by that, and I was like, whoa, this is really powerful. This is some top-notch audio drama right now. And yeah, this is very much chaos as unleashed. The Krynoids are in full force attacking, and it is very much sort of every man for themselves, and that's all I'm going to say on Darkness. It's bleak, it's twisted, and you really don't know who's going to make it out alive. And yeah, hopefully there is a season 2, because I think the way this story ends, it does feel like there will be another box set, and I'm very interested to know where it will go. So that's the essential sort of idea of Planet Krynoid. That's the basic plot beat of it, and I think that this is one of the best Big Finish audios of the year, and possibly in a long time with what it is doing. I think that it just has such an edge to it, and I know that this box set isn't going to be for everyone, and I don't want all my Big Finish to be like this, because I think, you know, because it's such a rare occasion where we get a box set like this really stands out, and it is something very special. Having the Doctor there is a very interesting take, and like I said, it's an interesting angle that he, you know, normally is the saviour. Instead he makes things worse, and he just leaves his colony to their own devices, even though he thinks he saved them. It's such an interesting angle to go for. The Krynoids are such a terrifying threat, and the way they are utilised is fascinating, with sort of the body horror aspect of it. The sound design really adds that sort of unsettling nature and quite grisly moments that really excel and really sell those horrific moments within it. Yeah, I think definitely worth checking out. Definitely worth checking out if you're a person who doesn't mind a little bit of gore and a little bit of gruesomeness. I think you'll be fine. But if you're a person who's sort of a little bit squeamish and you like a little bit of safety, you're not going to find it here, so maybe skip this one. But it is a real solid 3-hour epic, and quite frankly, one of my favourite Big Finish releases of the year. It's definitely in my top 5. It is such a powerful audio with what it does with the colony world. It's just a fascinating world, what's explored, and yeah, truly remarkable. I had high hopes for this box set when it was announced, and it delivers. If you love your early Big Finish spin-offs, like your Dalek Empires, your Cyberman, your Davros, this is definitely one to have on your radar, because it feels very much of that era, and it belongs in the same pantheon of those classic Big Finish spin-offs. So there we go, that has been my review of Planet Krynoid Nightfall. Thank you very much for watching. Please like and subscribe if you've enjoyed this video for plenty more Big Finish related content coming up in the near future.